Morning. Morning, Tim.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
How's the weather with you this morning?
It's lovely. It's so English, isn't it? How's the weather?
Totally. So, welcome everybody. Come on in. Come on in. Oh, good morning, Marie. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Please do let us know in the chat whereabouts in the world you are joining us from. It's so nice for me and Tim to see who we've got on the call. Welcome. Oops, sorry. Razan from the Netherlands. David Bolton, morning. Hi. Gavin from Edinburgh, welcome. Hilda from Belgium, welcome. Dan from sunny Somerset. Dan, it's not quite sunny here in North Yorkshire. The clouds are covering our sunshine this morning. So welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Do come on in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So we're just gonna kick straight off because we always run out of time in these sessions. It's so great to see everybody coming in from around the world. I have a little intro that I go through so I don't forget to say anything. We're just going to go through that. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and a very, very warm welcome to this Explain Pain in the Clinic. My name is Joanna and I am Director of NOI Europe, and I'm joined this morning by my very good friend, Tim. Tim Beams. So, welcome, Tim. It's great to have you here.
Morning.
Tim has been a NOI group teacher for more than 20 years. He has taught literally hundreds of
Almost
clinicians.
20. Almost. Come on, that's making me feel too old there.
No, definitely. I think we've probably passed it, to be honest. I know it's horrendous, isn't it? How long we've been friends for. Well, no, not the friendship bit. How long we've been working together.
You're digging yourself in there.
Sorry. So anyway, he's taught Explain Pain to a lot of people over the last 20 years, all over the world. Tim is an active clinician himself, specializing in persistent and complex pain. He is also co-founder of Le Pub Scientifique, which is an online mentoring and education platform for clinicians to get support from leading clinical experts and develop their skills in treating all types of pain. Tim will drop the link in the chat to Le Pub Scientifique. Go and check it out. They've got a great podcast and they also offer a membership option too. So it's well worth a look. These sessions are all about giving you a taste of Explain Pain and how to practically use it in the clinic. Some of you will have already done an Explain Pain course, and for those of you that have, these sessions will reinforce what you've already learnt. But if you are new to Explain Pain, this will give you a taste of what we cover in the core course. Tim's next course, his next online course is coming up soon, and it's summer school. And this is probably our most popular way of doing the Explain Pain course with Tim. And it runs over 8 weeks and starts on the 4th of June. But we will come back and tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the session if you're interested in joining, and you can ask any questions that you might have. So, just a couple of practical things. Tim is going to be talking for about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A, or the chat is fine as well, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. The recording of this session will be put on our YouTube channel called NOI Group Clinical Discussions, and I will drop the link to that in the chat as well as we get started. So you can watch on replay, and there's also, 30 or 40 other sessions in there as well on all types of topics. So there's absolutely tons in there, and people love that resource. It's really, really great. So today we are talking about vulnerability and resilience. Why some people develop chronic pain and others don't. So Tim, could you just, before we start, just tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about, and then we'll get stuck in.
Yes. Good morning or hello, everybody. So I think I'm I imagine everybody who's on the course on the call is thinking something a bit similar, which is why is it that at certain times people are more or less at risk of developing ongoing pain, and essentially the features of vulnerability or resiliency are part of our understanding of why that might be the case. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. Just if you think about it, Joe, we've all hurt ourselves at some point, and we've all been in pain, and we've all recovered.
Yeah.
And so we have that capacity in us. Yet there are times when that obviously doesn't happen.
Mm.
And the interesting thing as well, when you work with people, is that someone can develop persistent pain. They could hurt themselves whilst they are experiencing this persistent pain, and that doesn't necessarily lead to anything else. So there's something special at a particular time and place that means that some people are more likely to develop persistent pain. Also, there are features that are important in both the protection of that and the recovery from it as well. And essentially, vulnerability and resiliency are features, they're not traits that we have, they're states, they're features of us at particular times and places that are dynamic features of us. So we're going to talk about that,
Yeah.
and we could drop into a few different levels. We could drop into sort of systems levels, neuroscience. We could think about things from a behavioral point of view as well. So yeah, we've got lots and lots that we can talk about.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much. So first question. Uh, we often see patients with similar injuries who have completely different outcomes. Could you kick us off by explaining what we mean by vulnerability and resilience in the context of pain development?
Yeah, I thought I did a bit of that, didn't I? I
Kind
did
of
a
have,
bit
but
of
that
that.
was the first question. So,
Yeah, I know you've got a flow, haven't you? And I'm going to spoil your flow. Sorry, Joe. So vulnerability, well, vulnerability, first of all, vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. It just means
right.
a susceptibility at a particular time. It means that you are at more or a higher risk of developing something. It doesn't mean you will develop it. And it might be that there are specific features of you at a biological level. You know, maybe there's inherited predispositions there. There might be something going on in your body at the time. Maybe you're fighting a flu. Perhaps there's a sort of stressful situation that means that there's some sort of disruption and dysregulation of the endocrine system. So there might be features held at a biological level. Psychologically, there are things as well, and we hear things from our patients about the context, you know, within the context of things happening, of what on earth's going on. I heard something, it sounded really bad, I wasn't reassured. Maybe someone's worried, fearful, anxious, and I think that's absolutely natural in certain circumstances. We know that our emotional state as well can be a part of this whole state that we're talking about of vulnerability. And then there are vulnerability factors relating to our history as well. And from a social point of view, there are features of vulnerability in things like our disconnection, even our level of literacy as well. So if you come from a low socio and economic background, there are risk factors there as well. So, you know, on their own, one of these things on its own is probably not enough. But when we start putting them all together, and this is what emergence really is, isn't it? When we talk about pain, when we start putting them together, there's a sort of weightiness that the collective move us towards a position of more vulnerability.
Okay, thank you. And resilience, is that just the opposite of each of those things that where they may be experiencing sort of perhaps negative biological, psychological, emotional states?
Yeah.
Um, is resilience just the opposite of that?
No, I don't think it is. Because I think what you can exhibit both at the same time, but in
Yeah.
different domains. So, you might be vulnerable in one specific, or in a few different areas, but you might have and exhibit, features of resiliency in others. So, no, I think that there's a coexistence of two, and it shows how complex this is as well because of that dynamic and fluid nature of these features of vulnerability and resiliency. So for me, resiliency, it isn't the same. It's not on off. But there might be shared features, and there are, if you think about some of our talks that we've already have, there are features of resiliency in the biological of someone's health and their well-being that isn't necessarily the same, the counterpart to what we've talked about your immune system being vulnerable because you're fighting off a flu or
Mm.
endocrine disruption. There might be the physical capacity, your conditioning, as it were. But the two, you could have both of those at the same time. Then you could be a physically fit, healthy individual, but you might be going through a stressful time in your life, and there might be some sort of endocrine dysregulation or an immune, a strong immune response to something. So no, I think the two of them could coexist. Shall I run
Okay.
through a few of the features of
Well, yeah,
resiliency and see
that's what I
whether
was.
that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we were heading with this. So, yeah.
So I mean, I've already mentioned a couple of them, and I suppose one that does seem not quite on off, but sleep seems to be a feature. If you're getting good sleep, it's almost protective of you. It allows you to exhibit sort of features of resilience. But we also know that sleep can be hugely disrupted with pain as well. So,
Mhm.
it's not on off, but it's certainly quite a strong biological part of that feature. And the psychological side of it, again, yeah, I don't think that it's an on-off, fear, anxiety, and what have you. But there's something interesting about persisting pain is that we see a number of people really struggle with the ability to figure things out and problem solve and plan and what have you. And that does seem to be related to actually being in pain and grey matter changes and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex involvement and what have you. So that doesn't seem to be on off of what we see within a vulnerability factor. And then there are certain features where someone might exhibit quite a strong self-efficacy in an area that they understand and they know well, but it might be that at this particular time and context or injury or experience that they don't have the same confidence in the efficacy, so of being autonomous and making decisions and what have you. So yeah, there's a sort of similarities, but they're not all on off. And the same, we talked about social disconnection and what have you, and trauma, and actually, I sat in, and some people might have been at Ethic, but I sat in on Amanda Williams's talk, and she was talking about social determinants in pain, and some of the data that she was showing was that there are stronger social determinants. So, in other words, of someone having engagement and support in their connections in their family and in their community are stronger than the effects of smoking or stopping smoking. which most people would think are, like that's top of the list of, right, what do we want to do? We want to stop smoking. But actually, what it looks like actually starting to connect with your world and bring in some support from others has a stronger effect in the outcome. So
Mm.
now, given that, and I think this is where you might be going as well, given that when we start to unravel and listen to someone's story and we're communicating, it makes sense that we are open to understand and perhaps have a few questions to bring out what their social connections are like, whether or not they have someone that they can talk to or share experiences
Mm.
or ask for help or so, and then that is absolutely, not just valid, but that seems to be more and more and more important in our understanding of these features of resiliency. And features of resiliency are things that this is an adaptive state for us. It's something that we can grow and we can buffer and we can support and we can nurture over a period of time. And that sort
Mm.
of fits with notions of bioplasticity as well, doesn't it?
Yes. Okay, that's great. So that's really interesting. I've got a few points there. Delving a little bit more into resilience mechanisms
Yeah,
and what that sort of looks like, a bit more practically, perhaps. What factors seem to protect some people and help them recover well from painful experiences? So that would be the first part of the question. And then the next part is how do you actually use that clinically? So looking at the first part, what factors seem to be protective and
yeah.
help people to recover well from painful experiences?
So if I use some of the same ones that we mentioned already,
Yeah,
introducing ways to bring movement back into their life,
yeah.
sounds important, but needs to be done well, and respectfully for someone who's in pain, so that, having someone who can understand how you might bring that about, bring that condition about, then that's important.
Mm.
Understanding sleep hygiene might be a part of that. So these lifestyle features in us, and even diet as well. Giving and education fits into notions, I think, of self-efficacy and autonomy. So the more and the better someone understands what's going on, the confident they can be making decisions relating to that as well. And that might relate to what we've just talked about of engaging in movement or how to implement sleep hygiene methods as well. We talk about creating the state of having a flexible, curious mind as well, don't we?
Big one.
And that ability, that mindset ability, is important, because often people, they become what we would call tunnel vision, don't they? They sort of, there's only one option. I've always done it this way, and I can no longer do it this way. That means there's no way I can do it. And actually, part of our role clinically is to develop and create multiple opportunities, a number of different possibilities of, well, if this is what you want to try and do, let's find other ways, alternative ways of getting to that destination, and being okay on the route, and that's where acceptance might fit in here as well. So yeah, being a bit more flexible, a bit more adaptable with our thoughts, but at the same time, if fear or anxiety might have been a part of the vulnerability factors, is there might be ways of dialing those down as well. So we've got both working at a level where we're encouraging and nurturing and boosting resiliency, but noticing and working with the factors that perhaps created or were a part of a vulnerable state and
Mm.
being able to just dial them down. So there's a sort of tipping point in a way, isn't there? And that probably fits with our dims and sims that we've talked about previously, where there's like a balance. It's a bit more complex, and we've thought about other ways of being able to relate that. But there's many different dials and knobs, turning volumes up and down and what have you, and a bit like
Mm.
creating a tune and finding the right levels for that tune. So
Yes.
yeah, that would be a sort of thought about clinically. I th Sorry, you're going to ask a question now, aren't you?
No, no, go.
Go
I'll
on.
store it. I'll store it on my post-it note. Go on.
Yeah, well, look, and not everybody is as comfortable. Dims and sims mean danger in me and safety in me. So that's just looking for, yeah, things that maybe dial up, turn up the volume and the sensitivity, perhaps, or dial it down and protect. Yeah, so some people like to have like cues, about asking, and it might be things like, I mean, I have little questions like, if you're unwell, are you a decent healer? If you cut yourself or you burn yourself, what are you like as a healer? And how do you bounce back from illness? Or there might be like little things, if it doesn't come out, that there are just prompts, and they just open those things up. And energetically, I'm interested about that as well. So let's say, so you might hear, and you might be the first person that they've reflected what's actually going on in their life, but you might hear something where you go, oh blimey, there's a lot going on there,
Mm.
and you might relate that back to them and say, it sounds well, can I just reflect back what I'm hearing, because it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate at the moment. Have you thought about how much is going, and how, that sounds challenging to me. How do you feel about that, having told me about it? So that there might be ways to sort of bring him out that realization as well. And having some flexible prompts, it can be really helpful when you're communicating. Obviously, the more and more and more you do it, it feels quite natural, and they just come out, because you're thinking, oh blimey, this is wow,
Yeah.
there's stuff going on here. I want to know more about this. But yeah, having a few little prompts like that can be helpful. I actually make a point with many of my patients as well to say, I like to focus on some of the positives, Joe, as you know, because
Absolutely.
most people who I see have been going through hell as well. It's been mega
Mm.
challenging time. So when I'm noticing features of resiliency, I actually make a point of pointing them out and say, on our conversation, during our conversation, there's a couple of things that you've been telling me that are brilliant things for me to hear.
Mm.
Like, you're a good problem solver, and your sleep is all right at the moment. And in fact, what we know about those two things is they are brilliant for your recovery. So there's a few other things we can work on, but you've already got two things that are going to work really well for you in your recovery. So I make quite a strong. Otherwise, we're just noticing all the bad stuff. Like, oh God, this going on. Oh, this is bad. This is bad. And yes, that's important to know. And I sort of, in my mind, I've got this idea, and it's a bit like Dims and Sims, but I've got like a problem-based approach and a solution-based or solution-focused approach. And I'm sort of
Yeah.
thinking, how much do I spend time on the problems with someone? How much time do I spend on the solutions?
Yeah. And this is very much about the dance, if you like, isn't it? I mean, just to say to people that we have done previous sessions in the clinical discussions about things like validating the pain experience and the kind of language that you use around that with a patient. So, I mean, Tim's just touching on that today, but if you want to know a bit more about that, there is a clinical discussion episode talking about that very thing. And a lot of the things that Tim's talked about here today, in terms of acceptance, dialing down fear, we've done sessions on those too. So, you can do a deeper dive using the clinical discussions, but equally, the deepest and most comprehensive dive that you'll do on any of this stuff is with Tim on his course. But just coming back to what you've been talking about here, and the dims and sims is a big part of this, isn't it? And that's part of the NOI sort of God, I can't remember the word. That's my menopause brain. Sorry. Happens a
Methodology
lot.
approach or
That's the
something like
one.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
the
yeah,
NOI. But thanks, Marie. Part of
yeah,
the NOI. Oh my God, it's awful when you're live on screen and that happens. Part of the
yeah,
NOI approach is
yeah.
very much around the dims and sims and learning how to dial up the vulnerability and the resilience in your patients.
And
And this,
and and, and it's
Tim's
and it's
skill.
worth and it's worth saying, like, it's not like, so
Thank you.
if someone has had early life trauma, we aren't going to take that away from them, but
No.
we can work with the relational component
Yes.
of that, and the impact that that might have ongoing in their life. So yeah, it's not as simple as dial up, dial down. There is a bit more to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But this is where the intricacy of this and your skill in this, Tim, is, this is why we're here, isn't it? To hear some of your suggestions and some of the clinical tips and the questions that you might ask somebody and the kind of language that you use is really key for confidence with people. Yeah. So just so I think just to
Are there
summarize.
any questions here? Let's have a
Well,
look.
hang on. Do you have? Oh, here we go. Gavin. Yes, we've got a lovely question from Gavin. How do you communicate differently depending on whether you think they have largely nociplastic pain rather than nociceptive pain?
I don't know where that is. Sorry.
It's
Is
in
it?
the chat.
Yeah.
Gavin
How do I
Rutledge.
communicate differently depending on whether you think they have largely? Well, I don't communicate that much differently because of the pain. I just communicate differently because of the person. But what we talk about will be different depending on what we think might be underpinning their experience. And yeah, and if features of nociplastic, for those of you who don't know what that means, don't worry, because a lot of researchers have no idea what that means, and we don't really know how to measure it, although some groups would say they do, some groups would say they don't. So there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty. What we could take from that is we think that it's less that the tissues are a very important player in a pain experience, and therefore my communication would be around what that means for that person. And often some people still feel like that is a big part of it, and we might be trying to figure that out and problem solve them and what have you. Whereas with a nociceptive, which is more likely to be tissue based or largely dependent on what's going on in the tissues, it just means that our focus will change a little bit. And I have to say, I don't see that many people where I think that that is the big problem, because they'll have been around many people before they see me normally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim. We've got a couple more questions, which I'd like to get to in the right order. We have one in the Q&A, which are, what are your thoughts on provision of social packages of care for people with chronic pain, especially for younger working age population?
Cool. Well, I had a conversation about this yesterday, actually. There are people, so Morton Ho would be a good example of someone where people are trying to forge better links between workplaces and healthcare and users, if you want. And my thoughts are, we are wholly, and particularly in, let's say, the UK, so that's obviously the place I know best, but is not set up for that. So not wholly set up for that, I would say, because in sometimes it does work well, and that's partly because of us using a medicalized model and a fragmented care system and what have you, where long-term conditions like pain are not well provided for, where other long-term conditions, so if you for instance had rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes, it would be a very different provision. So yeah, what do I think about provision of social packages of care for people with chronic pain? I think that it would be mega to see that change. And the conversation I was having yesterday was, wouldn't it be amazing if we could find ways of giving people some work, and the work, seeing the value in them engaged in some work, because actually that's part of a recovery process of being able to feel like you are there, contributing and part of a team. Actually, that's important in a recovery process. So yeah, I think that would be amazing to see. Sorry, yeah, I'm going off on one there. I did used to work. I did used to do the condition pain management. So I used to run the pain management program for the job centre. So I have sort of invested feelings about that. And the sad thing that happened for me and our program was people didn't see the value of returning someone to work. Like if you return someone from work and off job seeking allowance or support in other ways, that value for the next 10, 20, 30 years of whatever of their career, I thought was massive. But unfortunately, not everybody saw that when I was working.
No. Um,
Sorry, is
I
there
would
another
just
one?
like to get to the last question,
Yeah,
if
go
that's
on.
okay. So, from Sophie, one thing I have wondered about DIMS is how do you ensure that they don't turn into things that people then get worried about, anxious about, or avoid?
Oh, sorry, I'm just reading it as well. One thing, how do you ensure that they don't turn things that people get worried about? One thing I've wondered about DIMS, how do you ensure they don't turn into things that people... okay, thanks, Sophie. I mean, it sounds like we're scared of it already by thinking like that. I think there, and anxiety is an interesting one here. So something that I work a lot with my patients around is the sort of having an anxious mind and being someone who thinks of all the possible problems that might arise. And a part of what I tend to do is I tend to talk about it as as like their superhero strength. So isn't it amazing you have this ability to be able to come up with all the possible problems that might arise? That's amazing. Like that is amazing. Yeah. And that you can at 3 o'clock in the morning wake up and come up with some new ones as well. Brilliant. Well done your brain. Well done your anxious mind. And can we use that to help us as well? So not like push it down and suppress it, but how, and I would have various different ways of coming up with some ideas, writing them down on a piece of paper at that time, put those ideas on a piece of paper, let's test them out in the future. And how about we have a counterbalance to that? So, okay, this could be a problem, but what about if that didn't happen and things went really well? What about that? Let's come up with some thoughts about when things go really, really well. And a typical thing I hear with anxious minds is, oh, well, I'm going to watch my daughter play sport and I'm going to have to sit in the car. It's a long car journey. Then I'll be sat down and I think I'm going to be in all sorts of agony because of it. And it would be, what happens if you aren't? What happens if it goes really well? What happens if you have an amazing time?
Mm.
So coming back, sorry, I've forgotten who it was, about the dims and sims and ensuring that you don't sort of focus on the negatives. Yes,
Sophie.
don't ignore it, pull it out, and then there are ways of also bringing some positivity in there as well.
I love that, Tim. And there's that you do this so well in so many different ways when it comes to sort of reframing things, and you have so many different ideas with this. Yeah,
And I'm not saying this is easy, or I get it right all the time, but I have that's my mental sort of, yeah,
yeah.
where I'm going with things.
You've got a massive bank or toolkit or whatever you want to call it of these kind of ideas and suggestions, and they're just invaluable at, just those little things to make people think about things differently. So thank you. Guys, we are just going to wrap up now because, as always, we do go over a little bit. Thank you. Any key takeaways, Tim, you just want to pull out there for people when they're going back into clinic with their patients, thinking about what we've heard today? Any sort of nuggets that you just want people to take home, messages?
Pain can be shaped by features of vulnerability and resilience. They're both real, they're both to a degree changeable as well. And yeah, I think that optimism and hope through changeability and adaptability is an important part of us working with our clients as well. So yes, there are challenges and people have gone through some horrible stuff, but they can still and they will be a different person. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. So we did promise at the beginning that we were just going to share a little bit more about summer school. If you want to go really deep with Tim, spend 8 weeks with him, being taught, being mentored, being supervised, being coached, then his next course is Explain Pain Summer School. And this is, I think, Tim's most popular course format. It starts on the 4th of June. It's a fully immersive 8 week journey and 2 hours a week. All the sessions are recorded. You can join live or you can join live and then watch on replay. Then you go away, you practice. There'll be reading and some tasks to do between. And then you can come back and ask Tim any questions, talk to him about any issues you've had. And it is probably the most supportive way to do the Explain Pain course if that's the way you like to learn. So the link to Tim, was there anything you'd just like to add there about summer school?
No, I think you've done a good job. Yeah. I mean, it's the most personable way to
Yeah.
learn. It was a real good chance of us meeting others and talking, reflecting, doing, which I think actually is how Explain Pain should be done.
Yeah. And you're all on screen, aren't you? So they literally you can have conversation with Tim one to one, sort of in the same way that we do here on these webinars, but you're actually with him. So if you're interested in joining that, the link is in the chat. Also, you will get the link in the email that we'll send to you in the next few hours with the link to the recording. So from Tim and I, we would like to thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. We really love doing these sessions. We love connecting with you. We love answering your questions. We just love like having this connection with the people that are out there doing the good work. And check out the YouTube channel. Loads more free content on there. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, won't we, doing something else? So thank you very, very much, everybody. It's great to see so many familiar names. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. See ya.